Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so if you've ever stared blankly at a physics equation and just felt totally lost in a sea of sines and cosines, you are absolutely not alone. Today, we're going to decode the intimidating mathematics of simple harmonic motion, but we are skipping the rote memorization entirely. Instead, we're going to leverage the ultimate visual master key, the phasor. Here's our syllabus for today. First, defining simple harmonic motion. Second, the phasor master key. Third, deconstructing the harmonic equation. Fourth, springs, pendulums, and energy. Fifth, real-world damping and resonance. And finally, we'll wrap up with the universal harmonic synthesis. Let's get into it.
All right, section 1, defining simple harmonic motion.
Before we can even think about solving those complex equations, we really need to set some strict boundaries for the physics we're dealing with. You know, in everyday conversation, we kind of throw around words like periodic, oscillatory, and harmonic like they mean the exact same thing. But in physics, they represent increasingly strict, nested rules. It's kind of like a giant puzzle where everything nests perfectly together. All simple harmonic motion sits right there in the dead center. It's inherently periodic, meaning it repeats after a fixed time, and it's definitely oscillatory, meaning it moves to and fro about a mean position where velocity completely zeroes out at the extremes. But here's the catch. Not all periodic motion is simple harmonic motion. Think about a planet orbiting a star. That's periodic, sure, but it isn't a simple to and fro harmonic oscillation. Simple harmonic motion is the absolute most mathematically pure form of this movement. So the real kicker is that for pure simple harmonic motion to even exist, the restoring force fundamentally has to fight the displacement. If the displacement is positive, say pushing out to the right, the net force has to be negative, violently yanking it back to the left. Mathematically, this locks into the formula F net equals negative k times x to the power of 1. And honestly, it's that exponent of 1 that makes the whole thing simple. The system is just in this constant, endless struggle trying to return to zero.
Moving on to section 2, the phasor master key.
To really deeply grasp how that restoring force plays out over time, we need a translation device. Enter our master key, the phasor. In tricky physics problems, this is sometimes called the Brahmastra, like the ultimate weapon, because it proves that one-dimensional linear oscillation is literally just the shadow, the linear projection of a 2D uniform circular engine. Picture a flashlight shining on a particle that's moving in a perfect circle at a constant angular velocity. That shadow moving up and down on the wall, that is pure simple harmonic motion. It totally explains why angular velocity pops up in linear equations. The time it takes to complete one up and down linear bounce is identical to one full spin of that circle. Which brings us to section 3, deconstructing the harmonic equation. So armed with this phasor geometry, all that intimidating calculus just kind of melts away. Let's meticulously pull apart this foundational formula. X equals a times sine of omega t plus phi. When you break it down, every single variable has a tangible physical meaning. Displacement x is constrained by the amplitude boundary A, which is simply the ceiling and floor of the wave. The system's driven by how tightly packed those waves are. That's the angular frequency omega, which equals the square root of k over m. And finally, the whole graph is shifted left or right by the starting line, the phase constant phi. That's really just the accumulated angle of the system at the exact moment time begins. Now, if you chart position, velocity, and acceleration against time side by side, it exposes this brilliantly engineered strict 90-degree feud. When the position hits its absolute maximum amplitude, meaning the object is stretched as far as it can go, velocity is zero. It literally has to stop to turn around. Meanwhile, acceleration acts as this exact 180-degree dark mirror to position. When position is maxed out positive, acceleration is at its maximum negative, pulling incredibly hard back toward the center. Let's ground this with a practical example to show you how this builds out our toolkit and helps us dodge some really common mathematical traps. A classic mistake is assuming that traveling half the distance to the amplitude takes exactly half the time. It feels super intuitive, right? But you have to remember, velocity is not constant. If we map this out on the phasor circle, you see exactly why that intuitive trap completely fails. Velocity is actually screaming fast right as the particle crosses that middle mean position, so it chews through that first half of the distance incredibly quickly. By mapping a vertical height of half the amplitude onto our circle, we get a sine of theta equal to 1/2. Basic trig tells us that translates to exactly 30 degrees, and since 30 degrees is 1/12 of a full 360-degree circle, we instantly know it takes exactly 1/12 of the total time period to reach half amplitude. No calculus needed for sure, just pure, beautiful geometry. Okay, Section 4, Springs, Pendulums, and Energy. Now that our geometric rules are locked in, let's apply them to the actual physical architectures of the real world. The real magic of physics is that it scales so perfectly. The mathematical architecture of linear translation maps one-to-one flawlessly onto the mechanics of rotation. So where a block on a spring uses linear displacement x, mass m, and force F, a spinning or swinging object just swaps those right out for angle theta, moment of inertia I, and torque tau. But think about a swinging pendulum for a second, like a swing at the local playground. How on earth does that fit our pristine linear math? Well, we can only unlock pure simple harmonic motion there by applying a very specific condition, the small angle rule. The actual restoring torque relies on the sine of theta, but when that angle is super small, the sine of theta is essentially just theta in radians. That tiny simplification is the magic key. It allows the gravitational torque to act as a perfect linear restoring engine, popping out that famous time period equation, T equals 2 pi times the square root of length over gravity. Flipping back to linear systems, we can totally manipulate the spring constant K to change how our oscillator behaves. Think about the shock absorbers on a mountain bike. Actually, if you physically cut a spring in half, it gets stiffer, which multiplies its constant. If you arrange springs in a series setup, hooking them end to end, it reduces the overall stiffness, so the time period increases. But mount them in parallel, side by side, and that stiffness stacks up, drastically decreasing your time period. And hey, the environment around the oscillator matters just as much as the physical hardware. Change the environment, say accelerating a pendulum upward in a fast elevator, and you introduce a pseudoforce. That pseudoforce pushes down, mathematically cranking up the effective gravity, which literally forces the pendulum to tick faster. On the flip side, put that same pendulum inside an orbiting satellite in freefall, the effective gravity drops to 0, the time period becomes infinite, and the oscillation just stops dead. No movement at all. Next up, Section 5, Real-World Damping and Resonance. So far, we've been hanging out in these perfectly efficient mathematical universes, but we eventually have to confront reality, right? Energy loss. In a perfect energy basin, kinetic and potential energy trade off flawlessly, crossing exactly at the 45-degree mark on our phasor. But nature is messy. It's viscous. Drag forces and fluid friction constantly bleed energy away from the system. You end up with motion that is trapped inside this exponential decay envelope, where the amplitude just shrinks and shrinks over time according to a decaying exponential equation. But what if we fight back against that decay? If we continuously pump energy in via an external driving force, we can force the system to keep moving. And if we hit the jackpot, if that external frequency perfectly matches the system's own inherent natural frequency, we trigger a massive, catastrophic resonance spike. The energy transfer maxes out, and the amplitude goes absolutely through the roof. It's a real game changer. This is the exact acoustic math that lets an opera singer shatter a wine glass or causes a poorly engineered bridge to literally tear itself apart in the wind. And finally, Section 6, the Universal Harmonic Synthesis. All right, it's time to pull the whole shebang together into one overarching master truth. Whether you're looking at a circular phasor tracking a geometric angle, a block bouncing on a coil, or a heavy pendulum swinging under gravity, they all synthesize into one single master signature. Despite looking completely different physically, they all boil down to one universal truth. Acceleration equals negative omega squared times position. This right here is the fundamental geometric architecture of the universe anytime something vibrates. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to chew on this final question. If the invisible microscopic compression of atomic bonds and the massive sprawling orbital mechanics of our universe both share this exact same mathematical DNA, what else in your daily life is secretly just a linear shadow of a spinning circle? Keep observing, keep asking the big questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.